I'm Jessica, 32 years old, and the founder of TechVision, a company worth millions today. Growing up, my family always saw me as the strange one, the dreamer who would never amount to anything. They mocked my ambitions, criticized my choices, and eventually they did the unthinkable, excluded me from our annual family reunion. Little did they know that their rejection would fuel my determination to succeed beyond their wildest imagination. What happened when they finally saw my mansion? Let me tell you about the day their faces turned completely pale. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you the most. Springfield, Illinois wasn't exactly the tech capital of the world, but it was where my story began. Our modest two-story house on Maple Street was comfortable enough, though nothing fancy. My parents, Richard and Barbara Wilson, worked steady, jobs that paid the bills. Dad as a bank manager at the local Springfield Trust, Mom as an administrative assistant at the high school. They were practical people who valued stability above all else, a trait they successfully passed on to my three older siblings. Michael, the oldest at 7 years my senior, followed the traditional path to success. He studied medicine at the U.S. State University, never questioning our parents' expectations. Today, he's a cardiologist at Springfield Memorial Hospital, with a wife, 2 kids, and the cookie-cutter suburban life my parents always dreamed for their children. Then there's Amanda, 5 years older than me, who became the family's star attorney. After graduating from law school with honors, she specialized in corporate law and married a fellow lawyer, creating the perfect power couple my parents bragged about at every neighborhood barbecue. Daniel, just 3 years older, completed the family's professional trifecta by becoming an accountant at a respected firm in Chicago. And then there was me, Jessica, the afterthought, the creative one, as they'd say, with thinly veiled disapproval. From childhood, I gravitated toward computers and technology when such interests weren't considered proper for girls from good families in small Midwestern towns. While my siblings brought home perfect report cards filled with as in traditional subjects, I was taking apart old computers in the garage and trying to rebuild them with modifications. Jessica, why can't you find a normal hobby like other girls? Mom would sigh whenever she found circuit boards and wires sprawled across my bedroom floor. Amanda was in the debate club at your age. She was preparing for her future. Our family. Dinners often became showcases for my siblings' achievements, while my interests were treated as peculiar distractions at best. I still remember my 14th birthday when I excitedly showed everyone the rudimentary program I'd written that could organize and categorize Mom's extensive recipe collection. That's interesting, dear, Mom said with a forced smile before quickly changing the subject. Did everyone hear about Michael's internship at the hospital? Now that's something to be proud of. The summer I turned 15, I used my savings from babysitting to buy components for a computer I built from scratch. When I proudly displayed it in the living room, my father merely glanced at it and said, "Couldn't you just have bought a normal computer like everyone else? This looks like junk." The words stung, but I refused to let them see how deeply they cut. Family gatherings were even worse. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert, who hosted the annual reunions, never missed an opportunity to compare me unfavorably to my cousins. "Look at your cousin Stephanie," Aunt Patricia would say within my earshot. "Already planning pre-med courses for college. So focused, not like some people who waste time playing with electronics." Even in school, where my technical aptitude began to earn recognition from teachers, my family remained unimpressed. My computer science teacher, Mr. Harmon, suggested I apply for a competitive summer coding camp in Chicago. When I brought home the application, excited about the opportunity, my parents balked at the cost and the impracticality of such an endeavor. "Computers are just a phase," Dad declared. "You need to focus on something that will actually get you a stable job." The defining moment came during my junior year of high school. I had developed a software program that helped local businesses manage their inventory more efficiently. I entered it in the regional science fair, working nights, and weekends to perfect it. Against all expectations, I won first place and qualified for the state competition. When I called home with the news, breathless with excitement, Mom's response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, honey. Did you remember to pick up your formal dress for Amanda's law firm dinner this weekend? That's really important." At the Xiao dinner table that night, Michael's recent publication in a medical journal received 20 minutes of animated discussion. My science fair victory warranted barely 2 minutes before the conversation shifted to Daniel's internship interview. Looking around at my family that evening, I made a silent promise to myself. Someday, they would not be able to ignore my success. Someday, they would have to acknowledge that my different path was not only valid but extraordinary. I graduated high school with honors, though my achievements in technology remained undersold at family gatherings, while my parents proudly displayed framed degrees from my siblings. My coding certificates and technology awards were relegated to a drawer in my bedroom. But rather than discouraging me, their dismissal only strengthened my resolve to prove them wrong. Little did they know that their black sheep was about to embark on a journey that would eventually leave them speechless. When college application season arrived, my parents assumed I would follow my siblings to state university for a sensible degree in business or education. Their faces fell when I announced my acceptance to a competitive technology program at a university in California. "California?" Dad sputtered over dinner. "That's clear across the country. And for what? Computer programming? Jessica, be realistic about your future." Mom was more tactical in her disapproval. "Honey, we just don't have the money to send you. So far away for something so speculative. Michael and Amanda both got excellent educations right here in state." The subtext was clear. They weren't willing to financially support a dream they didn't believe in. While my siblings had received significant help with their college expenses, I was told I would largely be on my own if I insisted on this path. "Fine," I said, swallowing hard against the lump in my throat. "I'll figure it out myself." And figure it out I did. I cobbled together a patchwork of scholarships, student loans, and part-time jobs. My first semester, I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus coffee shop while maintaining a full course load. During holidays, I picked up retail shifts instead of coming home, partly due to financial necessity and partly to avoid the inevitable criticism. The distance wasn't entirely negative. Being 3,000 miles away from Springfield gave me room to breathe, to explore my interests without constant judgment. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't think my passion for technology was strange or impractical. In my sophomore year, I met Professor William Hayes, who would become my most important mentor. After I stayed late debugging a project long after the rest of the class had given up, he took notice. "You have a natural intuition for systems," he told me, "and more importantly, you have persistence. That combination is rare and valuable." Under his guidance, I developed my skills further and began to envision creating my own tech company someday. When I shared this dream with my family during a rare visit home for Christmas, their reactions were predictably dismissive. "A tech company?" Daniel laughed. "Do you have any idea how many of those fail every year? Be practical, Jess." Amanda, always the pragmatist, added, "Maybe get a stable job at an established company first. You need experience before these wild ideas." Despite their discouragement, I began my first entrepreneurial venture during my junior year, a simple app designed to help students coordinate study groups. It gained popularity on campus, but ultimately failed to scale beyond our university. When I called home during this disappointment, seeking some support, my mother's response was telling. "Well, at least now you can focus on something more realistic. Maybe look into teaching computer classes at a high school. That would be a nice, stable career." After graduation, while my classmates sought positions at established tech firms, I decided to take the ultimate risk. With less than $3,000 in savings and my laptop, I moved to Silicon Valley to pursue my startup dreams. My first apartment was actually just a converted garage I shared with 3 other aspiring entrepreneurs in Palo Alto. We each had enough space for a twin mattress and a small desk. The bathroom was shared with the main house, and our kitchen consisted of a mini fridge, a microwave, and an electric kettle. To survive, I worked a series of odd jobs: customer service representative during the day, food delivery driver in the evenings, and virtual assistant on weekends. Every spare moment was devoted to coding and developing my ideas. During this time, my family's skepticism evolved into something closer to pity. Phone calls became less frequent, and when they did happen, they followed a predictable pattern. "Have you considered coming back home?" Mom would ask. "Daniel knows someone at his firm who might be able to get you an entry-level accounting position." Dad was more blunt. "This startup fantasy has gone on long enough, Jessica. It's time to join the real world." The annual family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Aunt Patricia would introduce me with, "This is Barbara's youngest, Jessica. She's still out in California doing her computer thing." The words "still" and "thing" carried the weight of judgment. At Thanksgiving dinner 2 years after graduation, Uncle Robert asked about my career in front of the entire extended family. "So, Jessica, are you actually making any money with this internet business, or is it more of a hobby?" The question was designed to embarrass, and it succeeded. As I stumbled through an explanation of the startup process and future growth potential, I could see eyes glazing over around the table. "Well," Aunt Patricia interjected, "not everyone can be as focused as Michael. Some people take longer to find their way." That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I cried for the first time in years. Not because I doubted my path, but because I longed for the family support that had always seemed reserved for my siblings. Returning to California after that holiday, I made a decision to create my own support system. I joined entrepreneur meetups, coding communities, and startup incubator programs. Slowly, I built a network of friends who understood my ambitions and valued my skills. Sarah, a UX designer I met at a hackathon, became my closest friend and ally. "Families often fear what they don't understand," she told me one night as we worked late. "Their disapproval isn't about you. It's about their own limitations." Those words became a mantra as I pushed forward, determined to build something meaningful despite my family's lack of faith. Little did they know that their black sheep was about to disrupt an industry and create something revolutionary. The idea that would change everything came to me during a particularly grueling week working customer service. I'd spent hours listening to people complain about the same problem across different platforms: the inability to seamlessly integrate their various productivity tools. Each night after my shift, I'd return to my tiny corner of the shared garage and code until my eyes burned, building a prototype for an application that would solve this universal frustration. This wasn't just another app. It was a comprehensive platform that could sync data across previously incompatible software systems, allowing for seamless workflow integration. I called it SyncFlow, and I believed it could revolutionize how businesses managed their digital ecosystems. For 3 months, I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, pouring every spare dollar into cloud server costs and development tools. My roommates watched with a mixture of concern and admiration as I worked through weekends and holidays, possessed by the certainty that I was building something important. The turning point came at a local tech meetup where I gathered my courage to demonstrate an early version of SyncFlow. As I nervously set up my laptop, a woman named Rachel approached me, curious about what I was preparing to show. "It looks interesting," she said, peering at my screen. "What problem are you trying to solve?" I explained the concept, expecting the polite nodding I usually received from most people. Instead, Rachel's eyes widened with genuine interest. "I've been looking for exactly this solution for my consulting clients," she said. "No one has built a truly functional cross-platform integration tool yet." Rachel, I soon learned, had an MBA from Stanford and 3 years of experience in business development for tech companies. Her expertise complemented my technical skills perfectly. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers and agreed to meet for coffee to discuss potential collaboration. 2 weeks later, Rachel officially joined SyncFlow as my business partner and COO. With her guidance, we refined our business model and prepared to seek funding. There's a pitch competition next month with potential investors attending, Rachel told me. The grand prize is $50,000 in seed funding. We should enter. The weeks leading up to the competition were a blur of preparation. We polished our presentation, fine-tuned our prototype, and practiced our pitch until we could deliver it in our sleep. The night before, I called home, hoping to share my excitement with my family. "A pitch competition?" Mom repeated, confusion evident in her voice. "Like baseball?" After explaining what it was, Dad chimed in, "Just don't get your hopes up too high, Jessica. These tech investor types are looking for sure things, not first-timers." I hung up feeling deflated, but more determined than ever. The competition? Venue was packed with entrepreneurs and investors when we arrived. As Rachel and I waited for our turn, I spotted the judges, a panel of 5 venture capitalists from prominent firms. My stomach knotted with nerves. When our turn came, I stepped onto the stage with our presentation loaded behind me. For 5 minutes, I described SyncFlow's capabilities, market potential, and our development roadmap. Rachel followed with our business model and revenue projections. As we demonstrated the prototype, I could see several judges leaning forward in their seats, their expressions shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement. The Q&A session that followed was intense but energizing. These industry veterans were asking substantive questions about our technology. They were taking us seriously. When we left the stage, Rachel squeezed my arm and whispered, "They're impressed. I can tell." 3 hours later, the announcer called our names as the winners of the competition. As we accepted the oversized check for $50,000, a prominent investor approached us. "I'd like to discuss additional funding options with you," he said, handing me his card. "This solution has serious potential." That night, I called my parents again, my voice trembling with excitement as I shared the news. "That's nice, dear," Mom said after a brief pause. "Is this real money or just for the contest?" "It's real, Mom, and we've been approached by investors for additional funding." "Well, just be careful," Dad warned. "Don't spend it all in one place." Their lukewarm response couldn't dampen my spirits. With our competition win and the additional investment we secured the following week, SyncFlow was officially launched with proper office space and our first 5 employees. The product launch exceeded all our projections. Within 6 months, we had signed contracts with 3 mid-sized tech companies who wanted to implement SyncFlow across their organizations. Industry blogs began featuring articles about our revolutionary integration solution, and our user base grew exponentially. As our second year of operation began, SyncFlow had become the talk of the industry. Our staff expanded to 25, and we moved to larger offices to accommodate our growth. When a major tech publication featured us in their Startups to Watch issue, I sent copies to my entire family. The only response I received was a brief text from Amanda. "Looks interesting. Hope it's sustainable." The true validation came when a larger tech company approached us with a buyout offer of $8 million. Rachel and I spent a weekend weighing the pros and cons before ultimately declining. We believed SyncFlow was worth much more, and we wanted to maintain control of our vision. "We made the right choice," Rachel assured me as we sent our response declining the offer. "This is just the beginning." She was right. By the end of our 3rd year, SyncFlow's valuation had reached $20 million, and I had personally become a millionaire on paper. For the first time in my life, I was financially secure, able to afford luxuries I'd never imagined possessing. I moved out of the shared garage space into a beautiful apartment in San Francisco with views of the bay. I bought my first new car. Not a flashy sports car, but a practical electric vehicle that still represented an enormous step up from the used compact I'd driven for years. It was around this time that I noticed a shift in my family's attitude. The calls from home became more frequent, and the conversations included more questions about my business. "So, this app thing you're doing is working out?" Dad asked during one call, his tone suggesting genuine surprise. "The company's doing very well," I responded, trying to keep the satisfaction from my voice. "We're growing faster than projected." "Your cousin Bethany is looking for an internship in marketing," Aunt Patricia mentioned during another call. "I thought maybe your little company might have a position for her." The change in their perception was becoming clear, and I had mixed feelings about it. Part of me longed for the validation and acceptance I'd always sought, but another part recognized the conditional nature of their newfound interest. Still, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. A development that would bring all the family dynamics to a head and force a long-overdue confrontation. 4 years after launching SyncFlow, our company had transformed from a promising startup into a legitimate industry force. Our headquarters now occupied 2 floors of a sleek high-rise in downtown San Francisco, housing over 120 employees across development, marketing, sales, and customer support teams. Our platform had evolved substantially, incorporating artificial intelligence to predict integration needs and automatically adapt to new software systems. Major tech publications regularly featured SyncFlow in articles about essential business tools, and I had been invited to speak at prestigious industry conferences. My personal transformation mirrored the company's growth. No longer the uncertain young woman working multiple jobs to stay afloat, I now moved through the world with confidence born of hard-won success. My wardrobe of hoodies and jeans hadn't completely disappeared, but it was now supplemented with well-tailored business attire for investor meetings and speaking engagements. The most significant change in my personal life came when I purchased my dream home, a modern mansion nestled in the hills overlooking Silicon Valley. The 6-bedroom, 8-bathroom residence featured floor-to-ceiling windows, a stunning infinity pool, and breathtaking views of the surrounding landscape. I worked with a renowned interior designer to create spaces that balanced luxury with comfort. The grand entryway opened to a living area with 20-foot ceilings and a statement fireplace built from locally sourced stone. The kitchen featured top-of-the-line appliances and custom cabinetry, perfect for my newfound love of entertaining. My home office, perhaps my favorite room, was designed with built-in smart technology and a wall of monitors that allowed me to work seamlessly from home when needed. The property included a guest house, outdoor entertaining areas, and landscaped gardens that provided privacy and tranquility. It was far more than I needed for myself, but after years of cramped living conditions, I reveled in the space and beauty of my new home. As photos of my new residence appeared on social media, posted by friends and colleagues who visited, my family's attitude shifted yet again. The occasional calls from home now carried a different tone, one of surprising deference mixed with thinly veiled curiosity about my financial situation. "Your place looks quite large," Mom commented after seeing photos. "It must have cost a fortune." "The business is doing very well," I replied, a simple statement of fact that I knew conveyed more than enough. Soon, the subtle requests began. Cousin Bethany did indeed reach out about that marketing internship. Uncle Robert called to discuss a potential investment opportunity in a friend's local business venture. My brother Daniel inquired about my financial advisor's contact information. Most surprising was an email from Amanda asking if I might consider helping with her son's college fund. "We're doing fine, of course," she wrote, "but with private university costs these days, a little family assistance would be appreciated." These overtures filled me with conflicting emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. The family that had dismissed my path now sought to benefit from my success. Another part felt deeply hurt that their renewed interest seemed tied directly to my wealth, rather than genuine pride in my accomplishments or regret for their lack of support. I handled each request diplomatically, offering actual help where appropriate, like arranging a legitimate internship interview for Bethany, who proved quite capable, while declining others, like Uncle Robert's questionable investment scheme. As spring approached, the annual family reunion planning emails began circulating. For over 30 years, this event had been hosted by Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia at their lakeside property in Wisconsin. Family members from across the country would gather for a weekend of boating, barbecues, and bonding. At least that was the idealized version. For me, these reunions had always been exercises in endurance, weekends filled with subtle jabs about my unconventional choices and comparisons to more successful family members. I had skipped the previous year's event, citing work commitments, but had tentatively planned to attend this year, curious to see how my changed circumstances might alter the dynamic. The reunion email thread grew over several days, with family members confirming attendance and discussing logistics. I noticed that while I was included in the thread, many messages seemed to talk around me rather than to me. When I finally replied, with a tentative, "I'll try to make it," the conversation continued as if I hadn't spoken. A week later, I received a private email from Uncle Robert with the subject line, "Family Reunion Final Details." Opening it, I was stunned to find what amounted to an uninvitation. "Jessica," it began, "after careful consideration, we think this year's reunion might not be the best fit for you. Given your busy schedule and the significant changes in your life circumstances, you might feel out of place with our more traditional family gathering. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable or for others to feel overshadowed. Perhaps we can arrange a separate visit later in the year." I read the email 3 times, scarcely believing the thinly veiled exclusion. Out of place? Overshadowed? The implications were clear. My success made them uncomfortable, and rather than celebrate it, they preferred to eliminate it from view. Still reeling from the email, I received a text from my cousin Emily, Uncle Robert's daughter, who had always been kind to me despite her parents' attitudes. "Just heard Mom and Dad talking about the reunion," she wrote. "They're worried your fancy lifestyle will make everyone else feel bad. Dad said something about not wanting to hear about Silicon Valley this and millions that all weekend. I think it's awful. Just wanted you to know what's really going on." A second text followed. "Also, Aunt Barbara, my mother, told them last Christmas that your success is probably just lucky timing with the tech bubble, and that you got in with the right crowd rather than actually building something lasting. I'm so sorry, Jess." The messages hit me like physical blows. Despite everything I had accomplished, the years of work, the sacrifices, the perseverance through their constant doubt, my own mother still diminished my achievements to luck and connections. And now, rather than face the reality of my success, the family had chosen to simply exclude me. That evening, alone in my beautiful home that suddenly felt empty, I broke down. Years of stored hurt came pouring out as I sobbed on my expensive living room couch. The success I had achieved, partly motivated by a desire to prove my worth to my family, meant nothing if they could not acknowledge it. The wealth and status I had accumulated couldn't fill the hole left by their rejection. When Rachel called to discuss a business matter and heard my tearful voice, she immediately came over, bringing comfort food and a sympathetic ear. "They're threatened," she said as we sat on my terrace overlooking the twinkling lights of the valley below. "Your success challenges their worldview and the choices they've made. It's easier to exclude you than to reconsider everything they thought they knew." My close friend Alexis arrived shortly after, having received a concerned text from Rachel. More friends followed, my chosen family gathering around me with genuine support and care. As the night progressed and my tears dried, anger began to replace hurt. I had spent years seeking approval from people who seemed fundamentally incapable of giving it. Perhaps it was time to stop seeking their validation and instead show them exactly what they were choosing to ignore. "I have an idea," I said to my friends as midnight approached. And I'm going to need your help. The next morning, with renewed determination and my emotions under control, I called my assistant to clear my schedule for the day. This situation required my full attention and a strategic approach worthy of a successful CEO. I'm hosting an event, I explained to Rachel over breakfast at my house. A sophisticated garden party at my home, scheduled for the same weekend as the family reunion. Rachel raised an eyebrow. I sense there's more to this than a simple party. I nodded, sliding my laptop toward her to show a spreadsheet I'd created overnight. I'm inviting every extended family member except Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, and my parents. Cousins, second cousins, great aunts and uncles, everyone who would normally attend the reunion. Bold, Rachel commented with an appreciative smile. What's your endgame here? I'm not trying to destroy their event, I clarified. I just want them to recognize what they've done, excluded someone based on success rather than embracing family diversity. And maybe, just maybe, help them see that their perception of me has always been wrong. With Rachel's enthusiastic support, I began executing my plan. First, I contacted Madison Wright, the most sought-after event planner in the Bay Area who typically handled celebrity gatherings and tech industry galas. I need something elegant but welcoming, I explained during our consultation at my home. Impressive without being ostentatious. I want guests to feel comfortable, but also recognize that they're experiencing something special. Madison walked through my property, noting the natural advantages of the space, the panoramic views, the terraced gardens, the expansive pool deck. We could create a magical atmosphere with string lights throughout the gardens, she suggested. Perhaps a champagne reception on the upper terrace, followed by a seated dinner near the pool. Live music, but nothing too formal. Perhaps a small jazz ensemble? Over the next 3 days, we refined the vision. A sophisticated yet warm gathering that would showcase my home while making guests feel welcome and valued. I selected a renowned catering company known for farm-to-table cuisine, arranged for tasteful live entertainment, and approved designs for subtle lighting that would transform my property as evening fell. With the event framework established, I turned to the most crucial element, the guest list. Using family contact information I'd gathered over the years, I created personalized digital invitations that struck a delicate balance between elegance and warmth. You are specially invited to a summer gathering at my home in California, the invitation read, alongside professional photos of the property. I've missed connecting with family and would love to share my life on the West Coast with you. Transportation and accommodation arrangements will be provided for all guests. The last line was particularly important. By removing financial barriers, I ensured that distance and cost couldn't be used as excuses to decline. Within 24 hours of sending the invitations, responses began flooding in. Cousin Jenny from Florida was absolutely thrilled to attend. Great Aunt Margaret, who I hadn't seen in years, called personally to accept and express her excitement about seeing my California lifestyle. Even distant relatives I barely knew responded enthusiastically, perhaps motivated by curiosity as much as family connection. By the end of the week, over 30 family members had accepted, nearly everyone who would normally attend the traditional reunion. I arranged for flights, reserved blocks of rooms at luxury hotels nearby, and organized transportation from airports and hotels to my home. The pivotal moment came 5 days after sending my invitations. My phone rang with Uncle Robert's number, and I answered with deliberate casualness. Jessica, he began, his voice strained with forced politeness. There seems to be some confusion about the dates for your gathering. No confusion at all, I replied evenly. My event is scheduled for July 15th through 17th, as stated on the invitations. But that's the same weekend as the family reunion. You must have known that. I was under the impression that I wasn't a good fit for the reunion. This year, I said, keeping my tone neutral despite the satisfaction I felt. Your email was quite clear about that. A long pause followed before Uncle Robert spoke again, his voice now tinged with panic. Almost everyone has declined our invitation, saying they're going to California instead. This is the 35th annual reunion, Jessica. You can't just hijack it. I'm not hijacking anything, I replied calmly. I'm simply hosting my own gathering for family members who wish to attend. Everyone is making their own choice. The conversation ended with Uncle Robert sputtering about family tradition and promising to sort this out with my parents. Sure, enough, my mother called within the hour. What are you trying to prove with this stunt? She demanded, skipping any greeting. I'm not proving anything, Mom. I'm hosting family at my home, something that should be celebrated, not criticized. You're deliberately undermining Robert and Patricia's reunion out of spite. I was explicitly uninvited from that reunion, I reminded her. Apparently, my success makes people uncomfortable. The ensuing conversation was tense, but ultimately unproductive. My mother, like Uncle Robert, seemed unable to recognize the irony of being upset about exclusion after having excluded me first. As the event date approached, my team and I transformed my property into an enchanted retreat. The gardens were immaculate, with additional flowering plants brought in to enhance the natural landscape. Subtle lighting was installed throughout, the grounds designed to create a magical atmosphere as day turned to evening. A transparent tent structure was erected near the pool, providing an elegant dining space that maintained the connection to the surrounding beauty. Inside the house, small touches showcased my journey without being ostentatious. In the library, bookshelves displayed technology awards alongside family photos, including vintage pictures of grandparents and great-grandparents I'd collected over the years. My home office, typically private, was subtly arranged to display framed magazine articles about sink flow alongside my first crude prototype, illustrating the evolution from idea to industry success. The night before the event, I walked through my prepared home, a mixture of emotions washing over me. There was anticipation, certainly, and perhaps a touch of vindication. But there was also sadness that it had come to this, that proving my worth to my family required such elaborate measures. As I stood on my terrace overlooking the valley lights, I wondered if this display would truly change anything. Would it heal decades of dismissal and doubt? Or was I simply creating a different kind of distance between us? Despite these doubts, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever happened tomorrow, I had built this life through my own efforts. I had persevered when they had predicted failure. Their recognition, while desired, was not required for my success to be real. With that thought providing comfort, I went to bed in my beautiful home, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The morning of the garden party dawned with perfect California weather, clear blue skies, gentle warmth, and a light breeze that carried the scent of jasmine and roses through my open bedroom windows. As I sipped coffee on my terrace, watching the event staff make final preparations below, a strange sense of calm had replaced my previous anxiety. Madison arrived at 9, clipboard in hand, overseeing the transformation of my already beautiful property into something truly magical. The catering team began setting up in the kitchen. The florists added final touches to elaborate arrangements, and the sound engineers tested the discrete speaker system that would provide ambient music throughout the grounds. The first guests will be arriving at 1, Madison reminded me. The shuttle from the hotel begins pickup at 12:30. Everything is on schedule. By noon, I was dressed in a simple but elegant blue dress, expensive but not flashy, with my hair and makeup professionally done to look natural and approachable. As I surveyed the final arrangements, I felt a curious mix of emotions: pride in what I had created, hope for meaningful reconnection, and beneath it all, a lingering sadness that it had taken such extreme measures to command my family's attention. At precisely 1 o'clock, the first shuttle arrived. Cousin Jennifer and her husband stepped out, their expressions transforming from anticipation to awe as they took in the property. "Jessica, this is absolutely stunning," Jennifer gasped, embracing me. The photos didn't do it justice. More family members arrived in quick succession. Great aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, cousins once or twice removed, nieces and nephews who had grown from toddlers into teenagers. Each reacted with similar amazement, their gazes sweeping across the infinity pool overlooking the valley, the meticulously landscaped gardens, and the elegant yet welcoming atmosphere of my home. I greeted each arrival personally, accepting compliments with grace while ensuring everyone had a drink in hand and was introduced to others. As the property filled with conversation and laughter, I noticed something unexpected. Many guests brought gifts, from wine and flowers to more personal items. "I brought your great-grandmother's recipe book," Great-Aunt Eleanor told me, pressing a worn leather volume into my hands. "I always thought you had her creative spirit. She would have been so proud to see what you've built." The gesture brought unexpected tears to my eyes. This tangible connection to family history felt more meaningful than any material success. By 2:30, nearly all expected guests had arrived and were mingling throughout the property, enjoying champagne and past hors d'oeuvres while exploring the gardens and public areas of the house. The atmosphere was lively and warm, with family members who rarely saw each other catching up against the backdrop of spectacular views. I was chatting with my cousin Mark when a staff member discreetly approached. "Ms. Wilson, there are additional guests at the gate who aren't on the list. They say they're your uncle and aunt, Robert and Patricia Morgan." A ripple of surprise ran through me, though perhaps I should have anticipated this development. "Please show them in," I instructed, taking a moment to compose myself before moving toward the entrance to greet them. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia stood awkwardly in the grand foyer, their expressions a complex mixture of discomfort, defensiveness, and poorly concealed awe. Both were dressed formally, as if attending a business function rather than a family gathering. "Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia," I greeted them with a composed smile. "This is unexpected. Welcome to my home." "We were in the area," Uncle Robert claimed unconvincingly. "Thought we'd stop by since apparently everyone else is here." Aunt Patricia's eyes darted around the entryway, taking in the soaring ceilings, the tasteful art, the subtle displays of wealth and success. "Quite a place you have," she managed, her voice tight. "Thank you. Please join everyone in the garden. There's plenty of food and drink." I gestured toward the terrace doors, from which laughter and conversation spilled. As they moved somewhat stiffly toward the gathering, I noticed a second unexpected car pulling up the driveway. With a jolt of recognition, I realized it was my parents' rental car. Though I had deliberately not invited them, their appearance wasn't entirely surprising given the circumstances. My father emerged first, his familiar tall frame now slightly stooped with age. My mother followed, smoothing her dress nervously. Their faces registered the same shock that had greeted all first-time visitors to my home, but theirs carried an additional layer of disbelief. This mansion belonged to their youngest child, the one whose path they had consistently doubted. I met them at the front door, maintaining my composure despite my racing heart. "Mom, Dad, I see you decided to come after all." "Jessica," my father said, his voice gruff with emotion I couldn't quite identify. "We heard everyone was here." "Your brother Michael told us we should see for ourselves," my mother added, her eyes darting everywhere but at me directly. I nodded, stepping aside to let them enter. "Well, you're here now. Please, join the party." Leading my parents through my home was a surreal experience. I watched their faces pale as they took in each room. The professional kitchen where caterers prepared gourmet offerings, the living room with its spectacular view and custom furniture, the library lined with books and awards. Their expressions shifted between disbelief and something that looked almost like fear. Perhaps fear that they had been catastrophically wrong about their youngest daughter. As we stepped onto the main terrace, several relatives called out, "Greetings to my parents." The contrast was stark. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were relaxed and enjoying themselves in this luxurious setting, while my immediate family stood rigid with shock. Michael and Amanda arrived shortly after my parents, their children in tow. My siblings displayed the same stunned expressions as they were welcomed into a world that contradicted everything they had believed about their little sister. "You built all this?" Michael asked as I showed him the property. "From your app thing?" "SyncFlow is a comprehensive business integration platform," I corrected gently. "And yes, this is the result of building a successful tech company." Amanda wandered through my home office, staring at the framed magazine covers featuring my company and me. "I had no idea it was this significant," she admitted, not quite meeting my eyes. The catered lunch was served at elegant tables set up near the pool, with each place setting personalized and the menu featuring locally sourced, seasonal cuisine. As everyone took their seats, I noticed my family seated together, their faces still processing the reality of my success. Rachel, who had been mingling as both my business partner and friend, stood to offer a toast. "To Jessica," she began, raising her glass. "Who saw a problem no one else was solving and created an elegant solution? Who persevered when others doubted? Who built not just a successful company, but a visionary one?" I've had the privilege of watching her journey firsthand, and I can tell you that nothing about her success was accidental or lucky. It was earned through brilliance, determination, and countless sleepless nights coding while others slept. As glasses raised around the tables, I saw Uncle Robert shift uncomfortably in his seat. The pointed reference to luck had clearly hit its mark, reminding him and others of their dismissive attitudes. After lunch, as guests dispersed to enjoy the gardens and entertainment, Uncle Robert approached me somewhat stiffly. "Jessica, I may have been hasty in my assessment of your situation," he began, clearly struggling with the words. "The reunion invitation was poorly handled." It wasn't quite an apology, but the effort it cost him was evident in his reddened face, an awkward demeanor. "Families should support each other's different paths," I replied evenly, "not exclude those who choose roads less traveled." He nodded uncomfortably before retreating to join Aunt Patricia, who was pointedly avoiding direct conversation with me. The most difficult confrontation came later in the afternoon, when I found myself alone with my parents on a quiet section of the terrace. The silence stretched between us until my father finally spoke. "You've done well for yourself," he said, gesturing vaguely at the surroundings. "Better than we expected." The faint praise stung more than outright criticism would have. "Better than you expected," I repeated. "Because you expected failure." My mother flinched. "We just wanted security for you, Jessica. This tech world seemed so unstable, so uncertain." "What you call uncertain, I saw as opportunity," I replied. "What you call unstable, I recognized as evolution." "But what hurt wasn't your concern, it was your dismissal. You never believed in me, in my vision, in my abilities." "That's not fair," my father protested weakly. "Isn't it?" I kept my voice calm despite the emotion building within me. "When Michael published a paper, you framed it. When Amanda won a case, you celebrated for weeks. When I won a regional tech competition that launched my career, you asked if I'd considered teaching instead." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but my father's face hardened with stubborn pride. "We supported you the best way we knew how," he insisted. "Not everyone gets lucky in this tech bubble world." The word lucky ignited something in me, the same dismissive term my mother had used to others, the same concept Rachel had pointedly countered in her toast. "Lucky?" I asked, my voice finally betraying emotion. "I worked 60-hour weeks while going to school full-time. I lived in a garage with 3 roommates to save money for startup costs. I built a company from nothing but an idea and determination. And you call that luck? My voice had risen slightly, and I noticed a few nearby relatives glancing our way. Taking a deep breath, I regained my composure. What hurts most isn't that you doubted my path, I continued more quietly. It's that even now, standing in the evidence of my success, you can't simply be proud of me. You still need to diminish what I've accomplished. My mother reached for my hand, her expression finally showing something close to regret. Jessica, we didn't understand. Maybe we still don't. But what you've built, it's extraordinary. It was the closest thing to validation I'd ever received from them, and despite everything, it unlocked something in my chest, a small but significant release of the hurt I'd carried for so long. As the conversation ended and my parents moved, away to join other relatives, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and emptiness. I had proven myself beyond any reasonable doubt, had forced them to see the reality of my success. But the acknowledgement, when it finally came, felt hollow. Too little, too late, and still incomplete. Standing alone for a moment, watching my family enjoy the luxury my impractical path had provided, I realized that the validation I had sought for so long might never fully come in the form I had imagined. And perhaps I was finally ready to accept that their limitation was not mine to fix. The garden party continued well into the evening. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the property was transformed by thousands of twinkling lights that Madison's team had artfully arranged throughout the gardens and terraces. The atmosphere was magical, with the jazz ensemble playing softly as family members lounged by the illuminated pool or gathered in conversation groups on comfortable outdoor furniture. By all external measures, the event was an unqualified success. Relatives who had barely acknowledged my existence for years now approached with warmth and interest. Conversation flowed easily, memories were shared, and connections that had frayed over time began to mend. Yet, as I moved among my guests, ensuring everyone was comfortable and enjoying themselves, I felt a curious emptiness beneath my composed exterior. The vindication I had anticipated, that moment of complete satisfaction seeing my family finally recognize my worth, was more complicated than I had imagined. When the last guests departed and the staff began the cleanup process, I found myself alone on my terrace, watching the valley lights twinkle below. The mansion that had seemed the perfect setting to showcase my success now felt cavernous and somehow hollow. Rachel, who had stayed behind, joined me with 2 glasses of wine. "Quite a statement you made today," she observed, handing me a glass. "Yes," I agreed. "But I'm not sure what it proved ultimately. That you succeeded beyond their wildest imaginations? That they were wrong about you?" I sipped my wine thoughtfully. "Maybe. But it doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would." The days following the party brought a flood of thank you messages from relatives, each expressing amazement at my home and gratitude for my hospitality. Uncle Robert sent a stiffly formal email acknowledging that the family reunion had been postponed indefinitely since circumstances had changed significantly. It wasn't an apology, but it was an admission of defeat. Most surprising was a text from my mother asking if I would meet her and my father for coffee the following weekend. They had extended their California trip and were staying at a hotel in the city. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in San Francisco that offered privacy without the loaded significance of my home. The atmosphere was awkward initially, with small talk about the weather and local attractions filling the silence. Finally, my mother set down her cup and looked at me directly. "We've been doing a lot of thinking since your party," she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "About you, about our relationship, about how we've treated you over the years." My father, usually quick to defend their positions, remained silent, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I won't pretend we understand everything. About your world, my mother continued. The technology, the startup culture, it's still foreign to us. But what we should have understood, what we failed to see, was your determination and your vision. We were wrong, my father added simply, the admission clearly costing him considerable effort. The words I had longed to hear for so many years hung in the air between us. There was no dramatic emotion, no tearful embrace, just a quiet acknowledgement that had come far too late to erase years of hurt, but perhaps early enough to begin something new. Thank you for saying that, I replied after a moment. It matters. The conversation that followed wasn't a magical resolution of all our differences. My parents still asked questions that revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of my industry. My father still occasionally slipped into his habit of offering unwanted advice. But beneath the imperfect communication was a genuine effort, perhaps the first real effort they had made to see me as I was, rather than as they wished me to be. Before we parted, I established clear boundaries for our future relationship. I'm willing to work on building something better between us, I told them. But I need you to respect my choices and my achievements without qualification. They agreed, though I suspected the road ahead would include many missteps and old habits reasserting themselves. Real change, like real success, rarely happened overnight. In the months that followed, I engaged in a parallel journey of internal healing. At Rachel's suggestion, I began working with a therapist specializing in family dynamics, unpacking the complex emotions around achievement, validation, and self-worth that had driven me for so long. Success as revenge is still letting them define you, my therapist observed during one session. What would success look like if it were solely for yourself? It was a provocative question that led me to reevaluate aspects of my life and work. I began to distinguish between the parts of my drive that came from a genuine passion for innovation and those fueled by a need to prove my worth to others. With my extended family, I maintained connections with those who showed genuine interest in my life and gentle distance from those who remained toxic. Aunt Patricia continued to make occasional undermining comments when we interacted, but they no longer carried the sting they once had. Uncle Robert made awkward efforts at reconciliation, which I accepted with grace while maintaining appropriate boundaries. My siblings and I developed more authentic relationships over time. Amanda, particularly, seemed to recognize how her earlier dismissal had contributed to our distance and made consistent efforts to bridge the gap. Michael took longer to adjust his perception of his little sister, but eventually, our conversations evolved from stilted formality to genuine exchange. Throughout this period of family recalibration, my personal and professional life continued to flourish. SyncFlow expanded internationally, opening offices in London and Singapore. I was featured on the cover of a major business magazine under CC, the headline, Visionary Disruptors Changing Tech Integration. More significantly, I met Tyler at a charity event in the city. A kind, thoughtful architect who appreciated my drive without being intimidated by my success. Unlike previous relationships that had faltered under the weight of my work commitments or status, our connection deepened naturally, built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's worlds. I love that you built something meaningful, he told me one evening as we sat on my terrace. Not because of what it brought you materially, but because it shows who you are. Someone who sees possibilities where others don't. With Tyler's steady presence in my life, my mansion gradually transformed from a statement piece designed to impress others into a true home filled with warmth and laughter. We hosted dinner parties for friends and select family members where the focus was on connection rather than impression. 2 years after the garden party that had forced my family to confront their perceptions, I found myself hosting a different kind of gathering. A relaxed Sunday brunch for a small group including my parents, Amanda and her family, and a few close friends. The atmosphere was casual, with none of the tension or showmanship that had characterized that earlier event. As I watched my father and Tyler discussing architectural features of the house, my mother helping set the table alongside Rachel, and my niece and nephew playing in the garden, I realized how far we had all come. The relationships weren't perfect, family rarely is, but they were authentic in a way they had never been before. That evening, after everyone had left and Tyler and I were cleaning up together, he asked what I was thinking about as I gazed out at the view. I was thinking about success, I replied. How I used to believe it meant proving everyone wrong, showing them the value of what they'd dismissed. But now I think real success is building a life that's authentically yours, one where external validation becomes increasingly irrelevant. That sounds like wisdom earned the hard way, he observed. The hardest, I agreed. But maybe that's the point. The family you're born into may give you your first definition of success, but the true achievement is creating your own definition, and then having the courage to live by it. As the California sun set over the valley I now called home, I felt a peace that no amount of wealth or vindication could have provided. The mansion that had once been a symbol of revenge had become something far more valuable, a space where I could simply be myself, surrounded by people who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. The journey from rejected family member to successful entrepreneur had taught me that while you can't control how others perceive you, you can choose how much power to give those perceptions. In the end, the most important approval was never going to come from family members whose faces turned pale at my success. It had to come from within. Have you ever felt the need to prove yourself to family members who didn't believe in you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path to success. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their unconventional dreams are worth pursuing, even when those closest to them don't understand. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that true success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by the authentic life you create for yourself.